Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for our session on 5 steps for implementing role-based access on the IBM I. And today's presenter is Carol Woodbury, President of SkyView Partners. SkyView Partners is a consulting and software provider for system security in the IBM I and AIX computing environments. Founded 10 years ago in 2002, SkyView is committed to delivering products and services that provide our customers with sound advice that not only saves them time, but also reduces the cost and complexities of security administration, including compliance. Today's presenter is Carol Woodbury, co-founder, president, and CTO of SkyView Partners. Prior to forming SkyView, Carol spent 16+ years at IBM in positions including Chief Engineering Manager and Security Architect for IBM's iSeries Security Group. Carol is also the author of the newly released book this year, IBM I Security, Administration, and Compliance. That book is available online at MC Press. SkyView has various software solutions, as we mentioned, that can help you with your activities. SkyView's Risk Assessor software is an automated vulnerability assessment. SkyView's Policy Minder for IBM I, automated security administration tool. SkyView's Audit Journal Reporter, predefined auditor-ready reports on security events recorded in the IBM I Audit Journal. And the SkyView Policy Minder for IBM AIX. And keep in mind that at SkyView Partners, we don't charge for installation and basic configuration. SkyView also provides various services, including the SkyView Security Checkup, which allow you to outsource your vulnerability review. SkyView's Managed Services for Compliance Reporting, where critical compliance issues are monitored by SkyView and you are notified if something falls out of compliance, as well as our re-architecture and remediation services, because we realize sometimes it's far more cost-effective to contract with an expert to help implement a security plan. So with that, again, I want to thank you for joining us this morning. Remind you that you can type questions into the dialog box and introduce our presenter this morning on 5 steps for implementing role-based access on the IBM I, Carol Woodbury, President of SkyView Partners. Carol?
Good morning, everyone. I hope you're doing well and having a good day and a good week. So today I thought that I would put together a slide or a set of slides that walk you through the process that we use at SkyView Partners when we're working with our clients on role-based access. Sometimes that term is called RBAC. You might see it that way. There's actually an official function within AIX called role-based access, or RBAC. But we are not so lucky in the IBM I community as to have that specific thing implemented in the operating system, but it can be implemented through group profiles. So let me go through what role-based access is and how you implement it, and then we'll look at Policy Minder, our policy product, and show you how it makes it easier to implement and maintain RBAC going forward. So the idea behind role-based access, or RBAC, is that you can define a role and assign what capabilities that role needs, and then make users a member of that role. And so the role will define all of the capabilities, meaning things like special authorities, as well as the access that they might need, so perhaps authorities on authorization lists or authorities to specific commands. Also, the idea behind role-based access is that the users within that role have all the authority that they need to perform whatever tasks they're performing, but they don't have any more authority than that. And so that implements the concept of least privilege access. role-based access is highly recommended by a number of laws and regulations, and it's really because it simplifies the review process of users' access. And it's implemented most easily on our system today by using group profiles. So the first step that you want to take when you go to implement role-based access is the roles. And this might sound like a complex process, but the roles that I'm talking about are really at the operating system level. And most likely within your organization you have already done this type of exercise within the application itself. So if we take a finance package, for example, within that finance application, it's likely that there are roles defined. So you may have somebody that is in the accounts payable role or the accounts payable supervisor role or the a role that allows somebody to process checks, that type of thing. And so within that role, those users are assigned certain menu items. And so if you have the supervisor role, you may have more menu options appearing than the person who isn't a supervisor and so forth. So within your organization, you've already gone through this type of exercise. So what I want you to do today is not think about this from within the application, but I want you to think about this from the operating system level. So if you think about it from that perspective, you have roles, things like the system administrator, and that's probably who I'm speaking with today is the system administrators. You probably have programmers or developers. You may have a system analyst. You may have an operator role. And then you probably have an application user role. And as far as the number of people that are going to be in a role, that application user role is going to be the largest. Because when we go to this next step, the next step is to list the functions that each role performs. If you think about those application end users from an operating system perspective, the only thing that they are doing is using the application. They aren't doing things like applying PTFs or modifying production data like a DBA database analyst might be. So from a size perspective, that end user role is probably going to be your largest. So you may have more or fewer roles than what I've listed here. What I'm just trying to do with this list is get you to start to think about the different types of roles that you would have on your system, and again, from an operating system point of view. Okay, once you list out the roles that you have, the next thing that you want to do is list out the tasks that each role performs. And this is easily done in a spreadsheet. I've just given you an example here. I have 5 different roles here. I have an administrator, a programmer, an operator, a DBA, and then those application users. And I've just listed some of the tasks that go on a typical system. Obviously, you are going to have more tasks than this. But if you note, what I've done is make this incredibly high level. I'm talking about it from a task level. I'm not talking about it from the actual commands that are being run at the moment. And I'm certainly not looking at this from the capabilities or special authorities that somebody might need right now. So what you want to do is list out those tasks. Some tasks, note, will be performed by more than one role. So, for example, applying PTFs. Applying PTFs may fall into your operator role. It may also fall into your administrator role. So there's, I'm not trying to say that tasks should only be performed by one role. You may have the same task performed by most roles, if you will. The point here is that you're trying to determine what the tasks are so that you can determine what the appropriate special authorities are that this role needs, and or authorities to certain commands and that type of thing. Now, what you might want to do or might need to do is get some assistance from the users in the role to determine all of the tasks that they currently perform. So, for example, when we help our clients rework the authorities that programmers need in production, there aren't too many left, but some programmers still have all object, and most auditors usually try to get our clients to not allow programmers to have all object in production. So when we go and rework that authority, it's kind of a mini version of this whole process. We go and we talk to the developers and find out exactly what the tasks are that they perform in production. And 9 times out of 10, when you talk to them, the first thing that they'll say is, oh, I need all object. It's, well, no. Could you help me understand what tasks you perform in production? You know, don't worry about the authorities right now, but just tell me what the tasks are. And they usually come back with, well, I need all object to do my job. Okay, let's try this again. So what you're really trying to get them to do is list out the functions that they're performing, not their perceived requirement for authorities, because oftentimes, at least every time that I've been involved in a project, we have always been able to reduce the authorities once we understand what tasks they can perform. Now, we may provide those capabilities at times through adopted authority or through other tools. There's a variety of ways to do it, but the first thing to get them to do is to list out the tasks they perform. Now, the other thing is that this can be a controversial exercise. If there are not clear and well-defined roles already in place in your organization, it can be a bit of an argument as to who is supposed to be performing certain tasks. So, for example, and I don't mean to pick on programmers here because I used to be one, but there's often not necessarily a clear delineation as to who is supposed to restore objects into production. So I've seen several organizations where before we came in to rework their security scheme, programmers were allowed to upgrade products if a new version of a product came out. They were allowed to restore things to production if they needed to debug something, and restoring a past database would help that, and so forth. So when it came to time to more clearly delineate who was going to do certain tasks, it became a bit of a controversy. So just be prepared for a little bit of argument if, in your case, there is not a clearly defined set of tasks and who is supposed to do that up until now in your organization. So again, the easiest way to actually kind of list this out and determine who's actually doing what is to put this into a spreadsheet. Okay, so once you determine who is doing what, that's when you can translate these tasks or these functions into actual details. So if we go back to that spreadsheet, you can look at things like restoring objects. Okay, so that goes under the heading of the roles for administrators and operators. So to restore an object, especially if you don't have all object, you need SafeSys special authority. So that would be one of the special authorities that I would go to assign the operator role. And things like creation of user profiles. Okay, if a role is going to be responsible for managing profiles, then that role obviously needs SecAdmin special authority and that type of thing. So that's where, again, you list out the commands that they're using. This is where the special authorities get determined and so forth. So if you don't know exactly what authority is required by a particular command, either a special authority required or authority to certain objects, the best place to go and get that information, if you've been in one of my presentations working live with me, you will know the answer to that question. Where is the best place to go? Yes, Security Reference Manual Appendix D as in dog. So that is the best place to go to find out what authority is required to perform specific tasks. Okay, so you figure out what special authorities are required. And then what I like to do is to create a group that represents each role. And so you may already have that group profile in place, but you may need to go and look at that group profile and make sure that it has only the authorities that is needed to perform that task. And this is the time to clean up those excess authorities. And you may want to do a new group just simply to be able to transition into that lesser authority. So you leave it up to you whether you want to use existing groups or if you want to create new groups. But the way to implement role-based access is to create a group profile, put all of the special authorities, and put any private authorities or authorization list authorities at the group level, and that will then filter down to all of the members of that group. And it's important to put it at the group versus at the individual level so that it makes it easier to review. Okay. Now, I like to create a group literally for each role. And I've had questions saying, well, there's only one person in this role. Do they really need a group profile? And my answer to that question is yes. And the reason I recommend this is because of turnover. And by that, I mean if somebody leaves the company and they are the only person creating that or performing that task, it's great if there is turnover and they can pass that role off to someone. But if they leave the company quickly, either through illness or through they getting dismissed, and you are required to immediately remove that profile, if all of the authorities that they have been granted are at the user profile level, you have just lost all of the tasks that that user performs when you create that or when you delete that profile. So if you can discipline yourself to create a group, even if there's only one person in that role, if that person leaves, then all you have to do is remove their profile. When the next person is hired and starts in that position, all you have to do is put them back in that role, in that group, which represents the role, and you now have those authorities back. It saves you a lot less time. And I've seen this happen at one of our clients. They had somebody in a very specific role. They were the only one performing that role. That person got dismissed. They had to delete the profile, and they lost all of that authority setup. So it was they learned the hard way that it was easier to put people in a role even when there's one person in that role. So step 5 is reviewing the user access. Now this comes a ways down, but at least at our clients, we recommend that people review who is a member of a group no less than annually. But my recommendation is really to do that on a very regular basis, and a basis that makes it very clear when somebody new was added to a group or when somebody new has a special authority. And the reason I do that is, again, I've seen clients where they only review who's in a member of a group annually. And when that happens and that user was added the month after the audit, there's been 11 months worth of time. And I don't know about you, but a lot of times I can't remember 11 months back. And when you see that new member of the group, you have no idea how that person got there or why they were initially added to that role. And so if you do this on a frequent basis, and you're going to wonder how I'm going to recommend this, but I would say do this on at least a weekly basis, then you can know right away. Now, I would never recommend that unless I had something to make that review very easy for you. So let me show you how PolicyMinder can help you with implementing role-based access. So I'm going to jump over to one of our systems, and I have in front of you the PolicyMinder main menu. Okay, so this is the PolicyMinder main menu. And with PolicyMinder, I'm going to take option 1 here, work with policies. We can define what we call a policy. Then you can run this thing called a compliance check. And that compliance check is going to tell you where your system differs from your policy or what you said it was supposed to be set up like. And you can see with PolicyMinder that we cover a lot of areas of i5OS, but what I'm going to focus on this morning is the user profile category and how it helps you manage those users, and it's specifically in the role-based access. So I'm going to go into the user profile category. Now when we're in the user profile category, we can create these things called a template. So I'm going to press F6 to create a template. Now one of the things that PolicyMinder can help you with is to make sure that every user in a specific role, or if you will, a group, is configured correctly. Now I've seen this happen. I've seen users in a specific group, and that's all fine, and they maybe are supposed to be in that group, but I've seen the users within that group have additional special authorities or have additional groups that they shouldn't be having. So if we set up the role, set up the group, and then say all members in that group should be configured like this, then you can tell where the differences are very quickly within PolicyMinder. So I'm going to show you how that works. First of all, I'm going to pop up a command line, and you can easily do that. If I press F24, you can see that the command line is always available within PolicyMinder. I'm going to press F21 and show you the roles I have defined. And I like to use a naming convention for my group profiles, something that kind of floats all of my groups together. Okay, so I have a number of different groups on the system, and you can see I actually have 2 groups for my end users. I'm going to use this last one. Okay, so all of these are my roles. So what I want to do is make sure that every user profile in my role users, which is my end user or application users. Okay. So when I go to examine user profiles within PolicyMinder, I can select user profiles on a number of different criteria. So I'm going to press F4 on this type field right here. You can see I can look at user profiles based on the user profile name or a generic, accounting code, number of days inactive, members of a specific group, user class, a special authority, and so forth. So what I'm going to do in this case is look at all the particular members of a particular group. Okay, so I'm going to select that. And I'm going to say to include all of my users. If for some reason I wanted to do something like omit, perhaps I wanted to look at all of the users in my user class, but I wanted to omit all of the Q profiles. So you can both include and omit profiles from a template. But I just want to include all of the members of the role called group user. And what I'm going to do is specify how those members' profiles are to be created or to be configured. So I've scrolled down, and what I'm going to say is that they should be in the user class. They should have no special authorities. The password expiration interval should be sysval. The limited capabilities should be yes, and so forth. So you can see that I'm picking and choosing different things to actually look at. So let's see, the password, status, max days. Okay, I'm going to leave the rest of these at the default. And what happens when you leave that at the default of any, it means that that value will be skipped when we run this thing called a compliance check. So I can very carefully choose which things I want to examine about these user profiles. So I'm just going to keep scrolling down, and I'm going to get this template created. Okay, so now I have a template called group user. Now I want to run this thing called a compliance check. So I'm coming out, I'm taking option 2, work with compliance. I'm going into the user profile category, and now I'm going to run a compliance check. And if I wanted to, I could submit this to batch, but we can run that pretty quickly. And you can see that now the number of profiles included is 6. So if I take an option 12 to work with, I can see that I have all of these users included, and I've obviously got some misconfiguration because nothing's compliant here. So let's take a look. Okay. So the way that you look at this display is that the policy, or what I've defined this to be, will always be in this middle column. The value, or what it actually is set to, is going to always be on your right. So where are we? Oh, okay, limited capabilities. So I have said in my policy that the profile is supposed to be created with limited capabilities *yes, and it's actually created with limited capabilities *no. That's a problem. Okay, let's see if we have anything different in anything else. Okay, so here's a case where the special authorities are supposed to be none, but it's highlighted, so they have spool control special authority. And this is where it's very typical when we help our clients, what we typically see, that the special authorities are supposed to be at the group level, and that a lot of profiles may have inherited them at the lower level. Okay, so this is one way that you can very easily help yourself clean up who has a misconfigured profile, so that you can get down to that least privilege access. Now, another way that it helps, again, from a review perspective, and where I say I think you can do this easily on a weekly basis and not cause yourself a lot of pain and heartache, is through another method. So I'm going to go in and work with policies again, and I'm going to go to the user profile category, and I'm going to press F6 to create yet another template. Okay, so in this case, we are going to create a template for discovering new members of that user group. Okay, so I'm just going to say, well, actually, let's use a different group here, different role, programmer role. And in this case, I am, again, going to include based on the membership of a group. Okay. And instead of saying how I want the members of that role, that programmer role, to be configured, what I'm going to do is take advantage of this first parameter called new profile allowed. And I'm going to change that from the default of yes to no. And press enter. And again, I'm going to run a compliance check. So when I run a, whoops, didn't mean to back all the way out. When I run a compliance check, I can either do that through that interactive method, like I did before, work with compliance, or I can do it through a command. And this is the command that you would schedule. And I would assert that you would schedule this to run once a week. So if I press F4, I can specify which template, category and template I am going to run the compliance check against. Now, when you run a compliance check through this command, you will automatically get a report generated. And what you can do is say that I want that report sent to me via email. And you even have the option to send that report only if there are non-compliant items. So that's one more way that you can set this up to be very automated, and you are only alerted when you have a non-compliant item, or in this case, a new member of the group. So you can send this to up to 10 user profiles if you want to, or 10 users, I should say. So it's running a compliance check, and it says all items compliant. What this did during the compliance check, as you can see here, is to establish a baseline of the profiles that currently are in the programmer role. So we have 2 of them on this system. and they are both compliant. And if you take a look at this, you can see the policy says that it's no new profiles, but it's already an existing profile. So it's in the baseline, it's okay. Now what happens if I create a new profile, create user profile, new programmer, put it in the right group here, group programmer, PGMR. Okay, and then let's rerun that compliance check. So I'm going to rerun that check this way. Okay, and now we have a different message. Non-compliant items were found. So let's take a look at that. Okay, and when we look at it now, the number of profiles has increased, and you can see under this compliance, it's next level. And I can take a 12 to work with, and now we have one that's out of compliance. Why is it out of compliance? It's out of compliance because it's new. So when you get the report for this, and I'll show you an example of this type of report in just a moment, when you get a report, the only profile that's going to be listed in this case is not all of them, but just the one that's out of compliance. So you can look at that and say, whoa, I've got a new member of this particular group. What do I do with this? Oh, well, this is our new programmer that was hired. So I'm going to take this option to say accept new and add that programmer to the baseline. Or that I've seen it happen where people were put in the wrong group. And so this is a very easy way to catch that very quickly. So I can just add this to the baseline, and now it's compliant. Now another way to do this, a slightly different angle that you can take when you are reviewing this on a regular basis. I'm going to go back into work with policies. And if I, again, take a slightly different angle at this, you may want to view who has new profiles that have special authorities, new or changed profiles that have a specific special authority that didn't have it before. So in this case, I'm showing all of the profiles that have the SecAdmin special authority. You can do the same thing with all object and so forth. Okay, and in this case, I have, once again, established that baseline. So I said new profile allowed no, and I ran a compliance check. So I got a baseline of all of the profiles that had those special authorities. I created a new special authority, or a new profile with the SecAdmin special authority. And when we take a look at this list, and this is a good way to show you the subsetting function. I'm going to press F4 again. You can see we have a subset function. So just like in reports, when we can do exception-based reporting, we can even narrow this down to just the new profiles. When we take a look at this one, we can see it's new, and so it wasn't in the baseline prior to that. What does that type of report look like? Okay, so in this case, this is an example of the PDF report that would get emailed to you. And in this case, this is a case where there are no new profiles. So in this case, it was no new profiles with SecAdmin special authority. But it could easily be that other example where we were looking for new members of a particular group. So in this case, you can see it will say exactly what was checked. It was the user profile category, the SecAdmin template. It was status of compliance, so nothing is out of compliance. Gives you the date it was checked. This is proof to your auditors that you are regularly checking user access. Then if we look at this other report, this is what it would show you if you did have a new profile that was added and had SecAdmin or was added to a particular group. So if I look at the bookmarks here, I can see that the template that I was looking at was SecAdmin, and I have a profile listed. So I don't actually have to look at the details of the report. Just the bookmarks tell me alone that I have a new profile that now has SecAdmin. But if I do take a look at the details, again, it's going to list out what the policy was. So the policy in this case was no new profiles. And then the value, or what the actual setting is always on your right. Now you can see we didn't specify to look at any of the details of the policy, but we actually brought back all of those details. And I have found in working with all of you that it's really handy to have the rest of these details when we list out this specific profile, so that you don't have to go and do more digging yourself, right away how this profile looks, and know right away if this is an appropriate addition for this profile or not. So then there is also a one-page summary report for this report, and it will list out the fact that this is non-compliant. So the exceptions to your policy are shown in this report, and again, you get a summary to show what was checked. So this is an example of how PolicyMinder allows you to check compliance very quickly. And you can see that all you have to do is schedule this check command to run once a week, and you can very quickly tell when you have members of a new group. We actually have clients that want to know right away when somebody has been given all object or made a member of CUSEC offer. So they run a compliance check for that particular special authority and group membership daily. But it's not a problem, it's not a burden, because they schedule this check command. The reports are emailed to them. A quick look tells them they're okay or they need to take action. And that way they have peace of mind, and they can catch the fact that all object has been granted. Again, if you go back to your typical activity, which is often just once a year, to review who has all object or who is a member of a specific group. If you do that and the next day after the audit somebody has all object added, you won't know for 364 days that that occurred. So I encourage you to start checking on a daily or a very frequent basis so that you can know right away when you have a risk to your system. And with that, we're done with implementing role-based access on IBM I. JD?
Wow, what a whirlwind. Again, if you have any questions, you can type them into the dialog box. We do have a few minutes. We are recording today's session, so I'm going to just take back the screen for a minute, Carol. Again, if you have questions after the session, you can contact your authorized SkyView reseller or contact SkyView Partners at skyviewpartners.com or give us a call.